7 years ago, I started working as Joe's political editor. From writing a few tweets and an occasional vox pop, we now publish about 10 hours of video content every week on our YouTube channel. I'm proud of how our team has grown, the contributions of our staff, past and present, in pushing us to a position where the Reuters 2025 Digital News Report ranks us as the third most frequently mentioned outlet when the British public are asked which news podcasts they listen to. And PoliticsJOE has achieved all of that with 4 full-time staff and an average age of 26. If you've enjoyed even half an hour of those 10 we publish each week, I've got a favour to ask. I'm asking for your help. Head to our Patreon and pledge £2 a week to support our journalism and keep PoliticsJOE moving forward in an era of tech oligarchs, zombie politicians and nutbag right-wingers. Head to patreon.com/PoliticsJOE and sign up for PoliticsJOE Premium. If you buy an annual subscription, you get a 20% discount. Or enter code POD at checkout for a monthly membership to get 90% off your first month. That's patreon.com/PoliticsJOE, patreon.com/PoliticsJOE.
Love podcasts, hate nonsense.
I wasn't even sure if we were recording.
We got nothing. Nothing from the gallery. Nothing.
Go, girl, give us nothing.
Yeah.
Evil on this earth.
Good morning, Conor. How lovely to have you back.
Thanks, Ava, for having me back.
God, you look unwell.
Well, yeah, I have been chronically unwell for the last 2 weeks, haven't I? It's been a rough, I think I brought something back from Washington D.C. and then...
Well, we're going to get into that later,
We'll get into that
we?
later, yeah. We'll talk a little bit about D.C.
Okay, we're going to give you a little bit of... We never do this, but I'm going to give you a little synopsis of what's going to go on in this episode.
And then watch it be nothing like that when we actually start talking.
We're going to talk about PIP payments, and then we're going to talk about Pride. Conor had been in Washington at Pride. I don't know. We'll get into it.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into it. But we're coming from the angle you guys might find it interesting. Straights do not log off. We are going to talk about whether Pride is still relevant.
But the good news is it will be the second half of the podcast. So if you do want to log off, you can do it immediately after we talk about PIP payments.
But you know what? And if you're a really heinous individual and you don't care about the disabled or the gays, log off now!
Oh, Lord.
Okay. So, PIP payments. Oh, it's all going on.
I honestly think this is one of the most contentious issues. Sorry, not contentious. That's the wrong word because it's not contentious among, I feel, day-to-day people. It seems to be within government only. Like everyone else seems to feel the same way. But
what room were they reading? Because it was not the one that we're all in.
I was cycling in this morning thinking about like us talking about this. And I was thinking to myself, I would love to be a fly on the wall of like the Downing Street office where someone is telling Keir Starmer like this is the hill to die on.
Well, so as I understand it, there is Morgan McSweeney. Oh my God, do you know what's so funny? I actually heard a journalist do that yesterday. And I was like, oh, girl. And now I'm like, here I am. Morgan McSweeney.
Yeah, okay, we got there in the end. Okay.
Who obviously is chief of staff in Downing Street. And he's very influential because he was the campaign director during Starmer's election last July. And he is credited... by the Labour right as securing this magnanimous victory of over 400 seats that Starmer procured. He is being told to cool his jets because he is known for being a little stalwart. He's known for not liking rebellious MPs, and his way of dealing with that is sort of like, when you get the fly swatter out, you might be getting it out at the moment because it's pretty hot.
Yeah.
He's kind of like that. Punch and Judy style with many of the Labour MPs. He's being told to cool his jets, and actually he needs to wane a little bit in his position.
Doing a bit too much.
Yeah, so they're like, Morgan, we can't kill the disableds right now. Okay?
Yeah.
We're going to give them a little breathing space. Let's see where the attitude is in a couple of years' time.
Firstly, I think this Morgan character getting so much credit for that election win is also kind of funny. That's a whole other discussion that I could have. But when you said that in my head, the cogs just started turning. So I was like, listen, we just have 14 years of mess. Like, I don't think many people were going to lose that election. If anything, they could have won more seats. But that's another discussion for another day.
Discussion for another time,
discussion we should have
it?
had in July last year on that night shift, shouldn't we? On the night show. I actually don't even remember what point we were there.
Morgan McSweeney.
Morgan McSweeney. I think I think it's very telling when you have someone who's advising government it's kind of giving me a bit of Dominic Cummings vibe, where it's like, it has to be my way or the highway. And I think when you have that attitude when you're in government or advising government, because he's not in government, he's advising government, I think that is a problem, because you need to be able to listen to people and admit when you're wrong. And actually, I think the general public at the moment would be very understanding and forgiving of the government if they did just take a step back and say, our mistake, wrong thing to go after. But instead, if you're doubling down and being like, right, there's any rebellious MPs, let's squash that. Well, you're just kind of proving everyone's point, aren't you?
The difficulty for them, though, is that they did U-turn on the winter fuel payments. And the line that was concocted to get them out, to unravel that mess, which, in my opinion, should have been, we got this wrong. Let's rethink. They tried to push this line of the economy is much better now. We've got more money to spend. There's more fiscal headroom. None of which were true. You know, I mean,
everyone's just lying for fun again.
Rachel was up there like, we've got a bit more money. And we were like, babe, Trump's just put all those tariffs on. You know, your little £8 billion headroom that you had was squished. You know, there are, anyway. Again, with the PIP payments. See, so I think that Angela Rayner yesterday at PMQs made a grave error, which was she committed, Mel Stride was questioning her at the dispatch box, and she committed to a vote on Tuesday on these PIP payments. She should have evaded the question there. Politicians evade questions all the time. Don't know why she decided to commit to that one.
She was like, media training who? I'm going to go in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, she did the whole spiel of being like, I don't know anything about these components of the F-35 jets. But instead she went for, we're kind of disabled on Tuesday. we are doing it. And then Starmer later that day was then forced to say the vote will go ahead next week.
Yeah. Well, Deputy Prime Minister said the same thing. So what are you going to do?
Well, she stepped up.
You can't say anything, yeah. They
could have fooled her there. They could have gone,
Angela's mistake, not ours. Sorry, Divas.
She ain't even in the same office. She ain't got a clue.
It's disappointing, I think, I think Angela Rayner, she's not to blame for this. Obviously, she's deputy. It's obviously Keir Starmer that's pushing this the hardest. But it is a shame for me sometimes, because I'm obviously, I say obviously, it's not obvious. I'm a very working class person from a very working class background. I do see this PIP attack as very much a working class attack. Maybe that's just me taking it a bit too personally, but I don't believe this is something that affects anyone that's got money, because otherwise why would you be trying to claim? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, you would still be, if you've got money, if you are of the middle classes, you would still be eligible for, mobility assistance, for a carer. The most famous example of that is Katie Price, who does take mobility assistance for Harvey, her son. But it's a different kettle of fish, right?
Because it's not a need per se in the same way as if you physically can't work or your work is impacted by something.
We're talking about people now who may not be able to go to the toilet if they have their assistance taken away. If you've got a little bit of cash, I'm not saying you might not have a lot, but if you've got a little bit of cash, you could feasibly employ someone to assist you in the private care sector, right? If you don't have that, if you've got no recourse, what are you going to do?
No, genuinely, what are you going to do? There's no answer to it. And I think what I was kind of trying to say about Angela Rayner is not to blame her, but she, I think, is seen by a lot of people, certainly like me, as like the working class kind of voice in government. She's been very open about her background. And sometimes I kind of just wish she would really put her foot down and just be like, this is some BS, enough. But then I also don't know what power, how much can she do that? She can't do it on everything. And also, we don't know. She might support this fully behind closed doors.
Well, she did just have a big row during the budget over the housing allowance for her department.
She's got to pick her battles, doesn't she?
Yeah.
No, and you do have to. You do have to.
But I don't know, because her position is extraordinarily... It's strong, because she is elected deputy leader of the Labour Party. That is not a position that can be... she can't be manoeuvred out of that position.
Totally.
Unless, she decides to resign. Starmer did change the rules of the NAC once. He might do it again. Who knows?
Well, it's I will say, even though I just made that point, I'm not trying to put it on Angela Rayner because it's not on her, but I think something that I, as just a citizen, aside from being a journalist or anything like that, looking at the government, I sometimes just feel like there's no one challenging, within the higher ranks. There's no one saying, no, actually, this is objectively a bad idea. You shouldn't be doing this. Whereas obviously you have these, I don't want to say lower rank and backbench MPs, who are obviously now lobbying against it. But it's, even then, it's like, look at how much impact is it going to have? I don't know. Listen, we'll get into it. But it's
well, you look at someone like Torsten Bell, who is a 2024 intake. He used to be chief of the Resolution Foundation, which is a think tank that is very progressive in its tax policy. It would not advise, and I think it probably has put out, I've read a lot of press releases this morning, but I assume that they probably have put out a press release that's not too dissimilar to the others, which is this is going to really impact, though it's going to really impact people. He would not be in line with this way of thinking. And it shocks me every single time something new comes out and he bends and he takes it. You know, he went into government. He went into applying for an MP. He was on this channel talking about how if you didn't lift the 2-child benefit cap, 1 million children will languish in poverty and how disgraceful it was. Now he's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry about it. The kids will be fine.
Well, wants to be a minister. You know, this is the classic game, isn't it? Of like, the minute you challenge government, it's like, well, say goodbye to your future career.
Yeah.
You could just get to be an MP forever and that's it.
But then I question, see, the problem is with the Westminster bubble, and I think this is what's sort of happening with the Morgan McSweeney's, is that it's a very febrile environment in Westminster. I mean, you know, you've spent time there too. It's got a real hothouse energy to it. And I think that a lot of the time people are self-validating in there or being validated by junior colleagues around them.
Oh, yes.
And they're in this sort of, when we say you need to get out of Westminster, you need to get out and go and talk to your constituents. Look at Vicky Foxcroft, who was a minister who's resigned over these PIP payments. It's because she spent, and she cited in her letter, I've spent too much time with people with disabilities to allow these cuts to go forward. If the rest of them got out and actually saw what life was like, I don't know they could sign this off in good conscience.
Well, firstly, I just want to say, I feel like one day we need to do an episode really like breaking down what it's like to be in the walls of that place and see it from the inside. Because I think when I talk to friends who aren't in media and even friends who are in media but don't do anything political, people just don't quite grasp what it is like when you're... Because a lot of these decisions are made by actually really junior people, but it's because they rally together, they then sort of lobby the MP or whoever it is to get the thing across the line. And so then, as you were just getting at, that MP then is kind of in a position where all they've heard from those 4 or 5 people is, this is amazing, let's do this. When actually everyone in their constituency is like, what the is this? You know what I'm saying? So just a side point, I actually think that's something really interesting that one day we should do. But
they got a new podcast studio, actually.
In Westminster?
Yeah, because you know it's really difficult to film there.
Yeah.
They've actually put one in the lobby. I saw the emails a couple of days ago and I was like, oh, me and you there.
Yeah. Could we rent it? Is this the thing? What, is that actually a thing? Like, it's just for like journos to go and rent?
It, yeah.
Stop it. That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's very well equipped.
That would be awful.
I think it's like a room and you bring your own equipment.
Oh.
But like...
Good luck getting this through the airport staff security. But anyway.
Yeah. Which actually should be less annoying because, oh my God, there was a guy, a journalist who used to write for The Spectator, doesn't anymore, but where I used to sit in the, in lobby, oh my God, he used to do all of his phone calls in there. It was so annoying, man. I'd literally...
We'd just out loud be doing these calls.
I had the worst seat in there. It was like, I was next to the shower.
Where is this?
On Burma Road.
Oh, okay.
Where the journalist said. I was next to the shower, so like people would come in their lycra in the morning, and then they would like, I know that they come out in a towel, and I'd
lycra
like,
is such an ick to me. I'm so sorry, but anyway, again, that's another point.
And then I'd have him on the phone yelling, and then oh God, it was just there was a lot going on. Anyway,
today's episode of Ava's the Victim. No, I'm only kidding.
No. No,
okay,
that's not what I meant.
But joke, no. I'm
okay, so essentially, this is. Shall I bring you up to speed?
Yeah, let's do the latest and maybe discuss from there.
So, about a month ago, it wasn't quite clear what was going to be in the legislation, and it wasn't quite clear if it was even going to see a vote in the House of Commons or whether this was sort of going to be. They were hoping it could be some kind of statutory instrument that would be able to be slightly mangled without seeing the Commons floor. Obviously, I was doing the ring rounds. I was ringing MPs. I was going, can you ask the Speaker if that needs to go, if you need to walk through the Division Hall for that? And they do. And that has changed the nature. And I think it will actually really change the substance of the bill because an MP does not want to have to walk through the division lobby voting to cut payments, right? It's a really bad look. Your name is going to be next to that for the rest of your political career, and it's going to stick to you like a fly on shit. It will.
It will, no, absolutely.
So the bill is sort of being watered down a little bit now. There's a couple of amendments that have been added. So what they want to do is they want to adjust the point system. So when you're applying for a PIP payment, there's certain criteria that needs to be added up, right? And then that's how they decide how much money you're allowed to have per week. So whether you need a mobility car, whether you need a carer, that sort of thing. And so these things are like, one might be can get dressed by themselves or can't get dressed by themselves. That would be a point. Can work unaided. This
can wash your hair. Go to the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And but essentially, the way that they're moving the scales. 200,000 people who currently qualify for certain entitlements will now no longer be entitled to those. And the Labour central government think that by adding this amendment that absolves those 200,000 people, they'll be able to win back support of the backbenchers. It's becoming quickly apparent overnight that's not going to work.
We can all dream, can't we?
We can dream. But I think that the kind of the way that this is panning out, because obviously it's moving very quickly, and I might have to eat my words tomorrow or even later today. Kemi Badenoch and the Tories still haven't really decided where they're going to vote. Their position is that these are not stringent enough.
Yeah.
And so you would think, she's going to whip everyone to vote against the PIP payments, because also she'd like to see a defeat, right? Starmer has this catastrophic defeat, and that's always quite funny for the opposition. I wonder if they will vote for them. My thinking on that is she does not want to be seen as the party that voted to keep the welfare bill. She would like, in any means necessary, to pull down the welfare payments. Does that make any sense?
That makes complete sense, and I agree. I think that actually, if you're Kemi in this situation, why wouldn't you sorry, but I can't speak, oh my gosh. Why wouldn't you vote for them to go ahead? Because at the end of the day, the way she can justify that to her party is we're still cutting it at least somewhat, even if it's not far enough as we would like. That's still a victory for the Conservative sort of brand, as it were. But the interesting thing is, it would be if Labour was split on the vote, but the Tories helped push it across the line. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That still benefits Kemi Badenoch, because then you've got the Labour Party completely split and something actually getting ahead that a lot of the MPs didn't even want or voted against. Let's say that were to happen. That helps her, because then you've got Labour in chaos and you've got something going ahead that actually most Conservative voters would probably see as a good thing, even if it's not far enough. They'll probably still. I think people who support this would rather see it go ahead as is than not at all.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. She'd love to be able to say, "Oh, look at how many of your MPs voted to keep the welfare bill. You're socialists." That girl does not know what a socialist is.
Well, listen, Kemi Badenoch is not a real person to me. I see her as a simulation, as like how to not lead anything. Like I just can't with her. And like even because my first encounter with her, I don't know her personally, but like in terms of work and whatnot, is when she was in the Equalities office, and it was just laughable. Like just the shit she used to say and do. I was just like, you don't know what you're doing. You just don't know what you're doing. And then now she's the leader of the Tory party, and I'm just like, it's funny. I
think it's quite widely known around Westminster. The joke is Kemi did not read the brief.
Kemi didn't even know the brief was in the table, let alone read it. She didn't even see it. So I don't know. Kemi is, again, sorry, a slight detour there, but say what you want about Keir Starmer, but I think at least most people see Keir Starmer as sort of somewhat a leader. Kemi, I just see as like this secondary school bully looking to get jabs in. And this is that energy of if she can help get it across the line when half of the other Labour MPs, let's say, vote against it. It's a jab. That's what she gets. She gets a little jab against Keir Starmer, even though she gets his thing across the line. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's something statesman-like about Starmer, although he has lost control of the party.
Yeah. Oh, God, it's not to say that he's doing a good job right now. I think objectively a lot of people would say, not objectively, or none of these things are
subjectively. There's something
in my objective opinion.
There's something very odd about Starmerism. I keep getting asked on panels. I don't know why. What is Starmerism? And I thought
you meant you don't know why you keep getting asked on panels.
No,
period.
No, but same. Honestly, same. Genuinely same. It's not definable. Starmerism is what works in the moment for him. It
really is where the wind blows, isn't it? That's how it feels at the moment. Yeah.
It doesn't. It really doesn't have a conviction. It doesn't have a feeling of an ideology. It really does wane.
I agree.
I think a really clear example of that is the work that he was doing when he was a human rights lawyer. You know, for example, you think about the man that he defended who had damaged a jet that was heading off to Iraq, and he said, look, they were off to commit atrocities, they were off to commit war crimes, and so therefore he should be absolved of this. It wasn't a crime, like two wrongs make a right, I don't know. And then you look at how he cracked down on Palestine Action for painting those jets pink.
The only way I can just explain it, which isn't an explanation, but the only way I sort of view it is he is this like centre-right figure, but also isn't.
No, because he isn't.
But also isn't. No, I don't get it.
No, because he isn't. I mean, look at the I mean, everyone's a bit more left wing when they were younger, but I mean, he started a newspaper when he was at university that was like, you know, adjacent to Socialist Worker. Like,
I know, but he's not at university anymore, Ava.
Right.
How many years ago was that, though? I'm sorry. Like,
and I think that my frustration, and this is not a dig on you, but I get actually frustrated
Please do dig on me, it's okay.
because he is an installation. He is an installation. He is a concoction of Morgan McSweeney and other figures around Blue Labour.
So you think he's just like biased?
A figurehead.
Sort of pushed in whichever way he goes.
I mean, with West Streeting, the man is who he says he is.
Do you think?
Yeah. I don't
Interesting.
know, you lot as well, you were going on being like, oh, I can't believe he did all of this about the Cass report. And I was like, I can.
No, I could believe that. Didn't surprise me at all. West Streeting has walked a very interesting line over the last several years where it's about pandering to people who are sort of anti-trans. I mean, the whole trans discussion is a separate thing, but West Streeting wants to be the first openly gay prime minister. I don't believe he necessarily wants it just for that title, but I think that is a very powerful thing to have under your belt. And I believe he sees the way of getting there as pandering to that side by doing things like the Cass Review, but then also using his identity as a gay man. You know, look at how often he does think pieces and stuff in these magazines and whatnot, where he'll be like, well, as a gay man, I'm like this. And I'm like, that's really interesting because a lot of the community actually are fucking fuming at you at the moment. So it's interesting that you'll kind of lean on that way to get things ahead. But then when it comes to actually sort of quote unquote helping, in this case, trans people, good luck with that. So it's an interesting one. But
it's a good segue as well, because I think we can move into Pride here, can't we?
Yeah.
Because I think that
West Streeting takes us into Pride. Let's go.
Yeah. I just look, as a casual observer,
You are not just a casual observer.
I haven't seen very much Pride this year.
No, this year's definitely felt very different in terms of, so obviously this month is Pride Month, but what a lot of people don't know is actual Pride celebrations typically are throughout July. And then you have some others scattered throughout the year, like Orlando is in October because it's too hot to do it in the summer.
You girls are like, we're having a birthday year, like rather than a birthday month.
I remember there was like a year, two or 3 years ago where I was doing like every Pride. I don't know how I was able to do it, but I was like, I went to like 20 prides around the world, and it began in like February and my last one was in October, and I remember it was the Orlando one.
Can I just let insiders into a really good joke that Sean has about you? It actually makes me laugh so much.
Is it one that's been said to my face? I'm scared.
Not sure.
Okay, go on.
Sean says, every Pride you cover, you go, this is the most important Pride ever.
No, it's this. Yeah, that is. I do know about this joke. This is like a long running joke where basically in LGBT world, there's like lots of discourse around, is this the most important Pride, or is Pride still a protest? And so like it's funny because this year, like with World Pride, which is what we touched on at the beginning, which I was at 2 weeks ago.
Touch me.
I didn't touch you. I can't think of anything worse, Dorlin, as we talk about my gay identity. So basically, actually, let's just dive straight into this. So 2 weeks ago, I was at World Pride in Washington, D.C. World Pride is kind of like basically cities lobby for it. Sadiq Khan has put in a bid for it, I believe, for like 2028 or 2029 or something like that for London to host it. And it's basically like a 3-week global celebration and protest, etc. The difference between that and like a city pride would just be that it's on a much bigger scale. People travel from all over the world for it. There's like international speakers. There's an organized protest. So like I went to that when I was in DC, which was down the National Mall from the Lincoln Memorial all the way to the Capitol building. Can
you believe it was in Washington, D.C.?
I mean,
the timing of that.
It was booked, I believe, in 2022 because it was meant to be in Taiwan, but that fell through. Yeah, so that had to change. And so it was in 2022. So at that point, they believed that I think that there was going to be a democratic government in place by the time it took place, which obviously here we are now.
Kamala would have loved that coming out.
Well, she did do a little Zoom appearance. Yeah, she did do a Zoom appearance, which I thought was quite funny.
How weird though, just to phone it in on Zoom.
Well, what's she going to do? Rock up in Washington D.C. at the moment? I don't think
sorry,
so.
let
Let's
you
be
down.
real. No, honestly, sorry guys. But no, what you were kind of asking about doesn't feel very Pride. It didn't feel it in Washington D.C., which was literally hosting World Pride. It's meant to be like this city takeover. There wasn't a single Pride flag up. There was nothing.
Really?
No, honestly, it was crazy. And like the people I was with, we were walking around and we were like, you would never know that there's meant to be the world's biggest LGBT celebration here in the next like 2 days. We got there, I believe, on the Wednesday. The main event was the Saturday and the Sunday. We only started seeing stuff for it on the Friday. So like this was a regular Pride, in my opinion, just like advertised as World Pride. So, but that I did speak to a lot of people there and organizers and whatnot, and it is because of Trump, and it is because unfortunately, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, funding's been cut. People are scared to do stuff because obviously it like feels less safe to them, even though DC is actually something people don't know about DC. DC has actually got the highest by like size of the city or whatever, has got the highest amount of LGBT people in the whole of the USA.
Can I just say I believe that?
Well, political gays as well, girl.
No, politics is gay. It is. Politics is populated by the gays. That's why it's always really surprising to me when someone like Trump or Vance comes out with this sort of like anti-LGBT rhetoric, because I'm like, girl, who's working in your office? Like,
listen,
you know. So not to do a Kelly Osbourne there, sorry.
Oh gosh, Lord. And I will say, DC gays are horrible people. The worst I've ever encountered. Sorry to generalize there, guys, but yeah, awful. So no, I don't know exactly where it's come from this year, but it just feels like everything is a bit more dim. And I think maybe it's just because the world is a bit more bleak at the moment and people are just feeling a bit... depressed is the wrong word, but down and out. And
somber, maybe?
Somber's a good word. Somber's the right word. And I think, to reference the Sean joke, the Pride as a protest thing is becoming more and more apparent this year. And like when I talk to, like, because like I say, most of the Prides are in July, I've been talking to a lot of Pride organizers over the last few weeks, and everyone is very much like, this year it's about protest. We're not even organising as a party. You've got some of them like Pride in London, which is kind of doing business as usual, but things
but it
like
always does, doesn't it?
Pride in London is always a little bit like that, yeah. And then you've got like, so Trans Pride Brighton is one of the ones we're doing a lot of work with this year, and they are like, this is a protest. They're like, this is not a celebration. They're like,
that's it. How disappointing is that in this year 2025? I mean, what is there to protest? Do you know what I mean? I think that the conversation should have been settled.
Well, it's a shame, isn't it? But there is still a lot to protest, and I think that especially when you've got like this current government, where you know the last Labour government was known as one that like fought for gay rights, LGBT rights more generally.
They pushed through that HIV legislation quite early on.
They did a lot,
and it was like a tail end of commitments, and now there's this sort of like. I find it's actually a very juvenile conversation that we're having about LGBT, because
it's completely childish.
It's very regressive.
Yeah.
It's some of the points that are being raised are totally farcical.
Yeah.
And it's definitely coming from this import of DEI crackdown that's going on in the States. And this sort of American evangelicism that's permeating now UK politics. And it just, again, it's so similar actually to the disabled conversation, because on the ground, day to day, this is not people want.
No.
People do not want the contention
around
either of those topics.
No.
But for some reason, in the bubble, you got a couple of people who might work for some of the broadsheets, who write commentary, who have always been violent and like to marginalise certain groups, who are now dominating the conversation in a way that doesn't actually work in the UK's communities.
No.
It's not reflective at all.
No, and it's actually, I'll be so honest over, it's so boring, and like it's something that's just been so obviously coming for the last couple of years, and it's like now it's happening. I mean, I don't know if you remember when we had Charlie Craggs on after the Supreme Court ruling, but she was like, we've been screaming this for the last like 5 years, and no one wanted to listen, and now it's finally happening. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is so shocking.
I think because I think so to her point, Yeah, they were screaming bloody murder, and people were like, it won't ever happen.
No, it's fine. You've got the rights. Don't worry about it.
Because it is so inconceivable that you can regress. Because it's sort of like what happened with Roe v. Wade, right, in America, where you go, well, they've given abortion rights. Why would reproductive healthcare ever be altered? And then it happens, and you go, whoa, hang on a minute.
Yeah, and I think the Roe v. Wade thing, I mean, I'll never forget that. Like, that was, I think, 3 years ago this week, actually, if I'm not wrong.
Nancy Pelosi.
I'm pretty sure it was.
I think it was.
I'm pretty sure it was like 2 days ago anniversary or something like that. Either way, I digress. That to me was the clear symbol that like the world is heading in a very weird direction. And it's not actually the whole world. The West is heading in sort of a weird direction of like regressing human rights. And I mean, you look at a country like Hungary, where now it's like if you're LGBT, you can't even protest. Like that's something that's just been like outlawed. You can't even go and do like a pride demonstration. And so it's like when people make sort of jokes about like, oh, there's too much pride in the UK. It's like, well, that's actually why, is because everyone's trying to make sure that we don't end up in a position like America where these rights start getting chipped away at. And I mean, using the abortion thing of Roe v. Wade, look at how quickly that then became on the agenda here. There's been like people in Parliament even saying, oh, we need to have abortion lengths cut down and whatever. And so it's so interesting.
That's always happened. You've always had your Danny Krugers and your Mims Davies and that sort of group of people who were advocates for that. And they said it was to do with their Catholic or Christian upbringing. I'm sorry, but I grew up like that too. You can do what you like at home. Yeah. Do not bring that where I can see it. Okay? I don't care for it. Especially not the Catholics. No. I mean, like, we have a bit of a nerve, because...
A lot of nerve, girl.
So, like, you're telling me you don't actually serve the Queen, you serve the Pope?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, very that.
What was the point I was making? It's more on the table now. You've got Nigel Farage talking about how the 24 weeks is too long. Mm-hmm. This conversation you cannot get sucked into the minutiae of the medical of this conversation, right? Because most of the commentators, most of the parliamentarians are not doctors. We do not have a medical background, okay? Mm-hmm. The comment that you can make is perhaps you don't agree with it. Perhaps you wouldn't want it for yourself. Actually, just shut up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's so
comments
exhausting.
on 24 weeks. Something's viable. What the? Did not realise, doctor.
But it's just what I'm so bored of is like we all get bogged down by like this random medical jargon around like, and they do it with the trans stuff as well, where they'll be like, well, your chromosomes say this. And I'm like, I don't give two fucking shits. We've all got
an A-level.
No, but honestly, I'm like, I don't care what my chromosomes say. Yeah. And I mean, I heard someone once say,
I don't count my chromosomes.
I don't care. I'm sorry, God forbid, is that a bad thing to say? I don't know. But I remember hearing someone once say like, we should be getting this was a real thing I heard in real life, that we should be getting our blood tested before we go into a public toilet to check our chromosomes.
Stop it.
I'll tell you who this was off camera in a minute, girl, because you know who it is. And
do I know him?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, did we used to work with them?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
And so basically, I can't go into more detail who that was because I'm scared of NDAs and all the rest of it. But either way, this person was saying, and I was sat there like, oh, you're really just tapped. Like, you've really just landed at a place of, okay. To me, there's no coming back from that. And I think what is so interesting about the world and where we're at now on the pride stuff and LGBT stuff and whatever, saw on television the other day, there was this debate over, like, why are we even having pride flags up? And it made me laugh because I was like, do you know what this actually really is? You're just mad that you can't hate us openly anymore because of the law. That's honestly what I think it boils down to. I think when you look at all the anti-trans rhetoric or you look at the homophobic rhetoric and all the rest of it, people are just so salty that they can't walk down the street and call you a slur anymore like they could have 50 years ago. I honestly think it's that simple. And I think that because of the way...
You call me a slur every day.
You call me one too, and that's okay. But do you know what I'm saying? I honestly think for a lot of these people, when you hear all this discourse around like, oh, why is there a pride flag up above the bank? Why is that actually bothering you? Let's really scratch beneath the surface here, because it's literally a colourful flag. Is it because that flag symbolises that we've got rights that you didn't want us to have, or that we've got the ability now to report your ass if you want to come at me and be homophobic? Because the one thing about the UK is, even though it is flawed and the police go on, ultimately the law is on the side of the person now if you were being discriminated against. And I do believe that a lot of this discourse, when you really boil it down, that's what it comes back to. And when I do watch these TV debates, it does make me laugh because I sometimes just think, God, if I was sat there, the shit that I'd be saying back to these people is not even funny.
But sometimes you can't even have a constructive argument.
No.
You know, like I was on a panel once on Piers Morgan and this woman started crying about abortion. And I was just like,
the minute there's tears, babe, I don't want to hear it. Sorry.
Like, yeah. No. Like, are we going to be adults?
Oh, wait, she was crying because people are getting abortions?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No.
And I was like, please. And then she, honestly.
I remember I once had someone when I was younger, when I said I was gay, they were like, oh my God, they were like, you're going to die of HIV.
Oh.
And I was like, not really how it works, actually, but okay, yeah, you don't just wake up one day, oh, gay, oh, today's the HIV. It doesn't work like that. I'm like,
the stork comes round and delivers the
virus. It just, but I'm like, God, is this actually the like? And that's why sometimes when we sit here and have these conversations, and I think, oh, that was nice, like we really got a good point across there. I'm just like, it actually doesn't matter because these people are out there and refuse to do one bit of like critical thinking or reading or even just like reading a news piece, because like using the HIV thing as an example, any news article you read now will very clearly state the virus can't be passed on if you're on successful medication, and that like we're on track. Well, we're not actually on track, you know, but in theory we're on track to end new cases by 2030, blah 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 blah. I digress, but it just goes to show, and the same thing with abortion and that woman crying, these people just don't want to look at a view outside of their own.
No. And I think that so much of the narrative around Pride has been lost. And I think that the joy some commentators get out of mocking the flag, out of mocking the people being out and proud, it's so miserable and disappointing. And I wonder if we sort of need to get back to the place where we're talking openly and constructively about, well, actually, you know, you look back at the 80s and the 90s, is pandemic strong enough? There was
for HIV, epidemic now, really, but yeah.
You look around and there are men of a certain age you will not see. All right, there is a rarity. There is a certain age bracket of men who are gay, and it's a surprise to see them. Yeah. And that harsh reality is because so many men died unnecessarily during that time. And I think we've really lost that point of the conversation, because when we talk about any other atrocity, we give it the grave understanding that it deserves. Yeah. For some reason, because Pride is a bit pink, we forget about this.
Yeah, I think a lot of why... Yeah, I mean, listen, I could talk about this for days on end, but let me try and succinctly say it. I think a lot of why... people don't understand why Pride exists anymore, because they seem to have this like goldfish memory of the past, and they seem to think like what you were just getting at. There is a generation of gay men who literally are dead, like a whole generation. You know, when I worked at Gay Times, there was a guy who'd worked there for 30 something years, and he lived through the AIDS epidemic and the peak of the virus in like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Most of the Gay Times office died. He was one of the only people left from that era because he was watching them all one by one die. And this is genuinely what we're getting. You know, but these stories are so few and far between because the people who lived through it, there's so few of them. So they're never sort of at the forefront of the discussion. But yeah, I do think Pride to the general public has lost its meaning, because I think people see it as like, oh, look, there's a brand driving down the street with a rainbow slapped on it, you know, and I understand, I agree.
Lockheed Martin have got the Pride flag on the side of the bomb.
Well, yeah, this is it. And I agree that isn't, I can understand if you're not part of the community. I can see why that maybe doesn't make sense. But what I will say is, what I would encourage people to remember is, when you have these flags and things on businesses and whatnot, it's actually telling people this is a safe space. And it's actually saying, like, when you do see, like, I remember once when I was at Pride in Manchester, my colleague Holly and I saw Co-op Funeral had a place in the Pride Parade, and they had a hearse driving with rainbow flags flying off of it and all the rest of it. And it was hilarious. But I was like, do you know what? It's kind of nice, because maybe if I did have a partner or something and they died, I know that Co-op Funeral is a safe place. Yeah. But no, in all seriousness, I think that
that is a real tongue in cheek. That I have
to say, it's very unserious.
Your lot are very good at doing that. Oh, it is funny.
Absolutely. But this is also it. You have to learn to have a bit of humor about all of this stuff. And I think people forget that, like, just because we're maybe a bit more whimsical at times and can have a little bit more fun with it, doesn't mean that we're not still making a very, very serious point. I think sometimes that's what people don't get. And then you have all the attacks on drag and all that come into it. And people are like, well, I don't want my children indoctrinated. And it's like, None of this is about that.
Or the heinous, sorry to really bring down the mood, but the sort of like under that drag, it was the bubbling up again of the paedophilia.
Oh yeah,
that really heinous rhetoric that was just sort of being allowed.
Yeah.
To come back in waves.
I would
narrative.
say it's back. I would say it's totally back. And like, you know, the reason I had to kind of take a step back from Twitter at one point is because anytime I would tweet something that had, because obviously my work is always for the most part, almost always LGBT. There are certain keywords that you tweet that these people sit and search for. One of them is trans, one of them is gay, drag is another one. And you would tweet it and just get like floods of responses being like, you're a paedophile, you want to kill my kids and all this stuff. And I'd be sat there like, I don't give two fucks about your kids, babe. Literally, I'm just trying to publish my work and move on with my day. But no, in terms of where Pride is at, I think that in the community, certainly, I think it's really returning to its roots. Like when it began in the UK in, I believe, 1972 now. So it's been, like 53 years. Which actually, can I just say, isn't it crazy it's only been 53 years? I think a lot of people feel like this has been going on since the dawn of time. It hasn't. These are actually very new concepts.
Well, do you know what's wild is, do you know, is it the Ballad of Reading Jail? Oscar Wilde, do you know the letter that he wrote?
I do not know that.
So when he was imprisoned, I think the charge was sodomy at the time. It's only 100 years ago.
Yeah.
That is a heartbreaking. I cannot get through that book without howling. It's the letter he writes to his lover.
Ava does have emotion, confirmed here today.
Oh God, should we cut that out?
No one can know the truth. No, but I will say, you know, I guess just to kind of wrap it up, I think that like Pride is certainly returning to what it was 53 years ago when the first one happened in the UK, and that is a protest in the sense that it's not just about protesting for this. I think some people, when they hear it's a protest, just think, oh, what are they protesting? They have their rights. Well, can I walk down the street in all parts of the UK holding hands with a man and not get hate crimes? Yes or no? The answer is absolutely not. I mean, I've been hate crime just for like, remember I got hate crime last year after getting off my Lime bike. You know, this is happening. Yeah. And I wasn't doing anything that was explicitly, I was literally in a North Face fleece and like, I wasn't wearing anything that you could quote unquote tell, you know what I mean? So it's
even
like,
if you were,
but even if I were, it's not a problem. But I'm just saying that's how far people are still going with this BS. So I do think we're seeing that return. I think in terms of the general public who maybe don't understand why we have it, I can understand why they don't, because the news programs and all the stuff that's out there is fueling this narrative that like this is all just a bit of stupid like fun and like wasting money and all the rest of it.
And that you're being invaded and indoctrinated.
And all the rest of it. And it's a shame, as someone that's been in these newsrooms, I understand why these outlets do these debates, and it's because they get clicks and they get calls and they get stories.
The only time when they were on side with it?
Go on.
In Birmingham, when those Muslim parents didn't want it to be taught in schools. Suddenly,
there's one evil that's bigger than the other. Suddenly, yeah, it's so
honestly,
jokes, isn't it?
So
it's so transparent as well, but people just don't see through it. So I don't know.
It's not even glass; it's just a hole.
It's not even glass; it's just a hole. That is so true. But yeah, I don't know, Ava. We'll see where things go. I certainly don't feel like what we said about feeling somber. I certainly don't feel that way. I'm like, no, proud.
Yeah.
I am always proud. No, I'm very much, I make a joke to friends and stuff where like, because I was very like badly bullied in school and whatnot. And I'm like, I made my whole career being gay. So now what?
Yeah.
And I would advise anyone else out there who's upset by everything going on to do the same damn thing and start fighting the fight, as it were. I'm not an activist, but you know, if you are, get yourself down to a little Pride and make a banner.
Be proud. Love that. Right. See you a lot on the Patreon.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm Alistair Campbell's son, Ed. My dad got me this job at PoliticsJOE, and now we've launched the Patreon. We'd love all your support to keep me gainfully employed. That's right, me, the son of Alistair Campbell. So head on over to patreon.com/PoliticsJOE. Sign up with the code POD and you'll get a
90%.
You'll get a 90% discount. That's patreon.com/PoliticsJOE. And I'm Alistair Campbell's son.